Yes.
Hi, my name is Peter Hayes. Come on back, let's chat, bring your stuff. I'm the head of our crime fraud issues and that sort. This is Brad Osler. He's our head of appeals. He's also head of our public integrity unit. So it's kind of like what they mentioned to us, sort of it falls in with our two. So real quick, just let me start off by a couple things. One is,
Do you want me to see if there's an investigator?
is there?
Okay.
I gotta start with this. So, is what you want to share with us have to do with? Because I was told it regards Anthony Germano.
Correct.
Was it about him while he was here as an ADA? Or is it about something that he did?
No, he wasn't. To my knowledge, he wasn't an ADA at this time. He had a self-practice.
Okay. So then.
So here's my thing: is I've reached out a couple times. I was told by a couple people that they didn't feel comfortable investigating the case.
Okay.
Okay. My daughter, he did a fraudulent adoption. I'll get into that with you guys in a minute. It was brought to my attention by the Social Security Administration and the Office of Inspector Generals.
Okay.
Because they were investigating me for disability fraud, for collecting. And I said, no, I adopted her. I said, but the Social Security Administration has not changed her birth certificate, even though I've sent it numerous times. So they wanted the information. I gave them the information. They said, you need to report this locally. It's a crime. And this man committed a crime. He got a court order to change her name. He changes her name her last name to Urbino by Judge Gilbert, which I'm just finding out. I paid for an adoption, over $5,000.
Okay.
And years later, 2022, I'm finding out that he changed her name through the Supreme Court. Concurrently, he had a petition going in family court to change her name as well.
Okay.
He withdrew that one after the Supreme Court granted it.
Okay.
So then what he did as part of the adoption process, he had us fill out acknowledgement of paternity, which I questioned in emails and text messages. I said, it says biological father. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, Anthony, but please, I don't want to sign something that's untrue, and I have evidence of that.
Okay.
And he said, we'll discuss it Monday. Well, Monday came around. He told me it's part of the adoption process.
When was this?
This was in 2018.
Okay.
It started. I just reported it recently, and it was brought to my attention recently. So
that's when you're meeting, exchanging emails and all that.
Yes, because I was engaged to be married in 2017. My wife, now ex-wife, fiance at the time, said, if something was to happen to me, you've been raising Isabella since she's 2. She loves you, you're her father, you're the only father she knows. We need to get a legal adoption done, because if I was to get hit by a bus, God forbid, you wouldn't have any legal rights to her. She'd have to go to my mother, who is a junkie, whatever, her problem is with her mom. She does not want her, because of her childhood scar, she doesn't want history repeating itself, so she says.
Sure.
So we choose Anthony Germano based on that she's friends with him and his wife. She went to school with him and his wife. I know Anthony from the neighborhood, from Webster Elementary School, and we didn't go to the same high school, but so I felt comfortable after meeting him. I gave him money for an adoption. Fast forward to 2022, my ex-wife files a statement to acknowledge, or files a petition, excuse my words, to vacate acknowledgement of paternity. Okay. And she says that I brought her to my attorney's office and we both forced her to sign this document. Well, Judge Serio at the time, and this was in 2022, and I have the docket numbers and everything, and make it a little easier on you guys. I put together a whole investigation, basically. The stuff that was given to me and the stuff that I found. But basically, we went before Judge Serio, and she basically ripped her apart and said, how dare you try to take this man's, he's been raising your daughter. And if you could see the petitions that were done in the Supreme Court, which are those, and the one that was running concurrently, they both say there isn't, and in here they both say there isn't another petition taken out in another court. Well, these are both running concurrently, as you can see on there. They were both done between September and November of 2017 to change a name. So then from what he did is he had us sign the acknowledgement of paternity. He, in that fact, this is the acknowledgement of paternity. He signs Karen's, well, he has his paralegal, who's not Karen Smith, signed the name Karen Smith, and he signs it Joseph Verteschi, his former law partner, and it's clearly his handwriting, and he was the only one there that night. So they both sign and print fictitious names on the acknowledgement of paternity. Well, before Judge Serio, my ex said that she was forced to do this, so immediately I called Mr. Germano and I said, I'm so sorry, but it's probably going to be brought to your attention. She's off the deep end. She should be on medication. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And she just said in Judge Serio's statement to vacate this, adoption, is how I was told to me. She said that you and I forced her to sign this document. He goes, Michael, don't worry about it. Julie's a good friend of mine. I'll make a phone call. And I thought, thank God, because the last thing I wanted was to get a man who was in trouble for not doing something that he didn't do. Because I knew nobody forced her to do that. Mm-hmm. But now that was her plea saying, I know you did something wrong. Family partner better take care of me. I'm not paying child support because she would have had to pay me child support. And she even said, I'm not paying child support. I have knowledge that Anthony Germano did this fraudulently. It's not an adoption, stupid. That's what she told me. So then Anthony Germano put Arlene Bradshaw in place to bust my balls, excuse my language, but that lady has had nothing on me. And she's recently tried to vacate this. And she left out every bit of information based on the fraud. She actually made it look like me and Mom did something wrong by signing acknowledgement of paternity when she was 7, which I'm now finding out is wrong. But I refuse to agree because, number one, she's my daughter. I've been raising her since she's 2, and I love her. So I'm not going to agree to vacate this, and I'm definitely not going to do it, as Anthony Germano has made threats against me, because when I let him know I knew about this, he said to me, where are you going to go? You go to the DA's office? I know everybody there. I was Fitzpatrick's number 2. He loves me. They're not going to listen to you. He told me Cheyenne is my partner and best friend, and his brother is a very good friend of mine. He's a sergeant in the sheriff's department. Where are you going to go? I just left the sheriff's department because I made a report there last year about that, and nobody's done anything. I've called internal affairs. I've recently emailed internal affairs. Okay, he's using Cheyenne. Mark Cheyenne, his friendship with Mark Cheyenne and his friendship with Jeff Cheyenne, his brother, and he's telling me, he told me Kevin Cooner's a good friend of mine. I go, who the hell's Kevin Cooner? He goes, you're a divorce judge. I go, no, it's not. My divorce judge is Danielle Fogel. He goes, not by next week it won't be. I have a deed here, a sheriff's deed that they took my house away that I also believe is fraudulent. Nobody will get back to me at the sheriff's department. I found a whole bunch of inconsistencies in here. You guys are hiring investigators. I've been doing a really good job with this. But there's a lot to this, and I had messages. One of the things when I've talked to an ADA here before, and they said that I did something wrong by signing this too, so I should not talk to anybody. Well, I have documents with Anthony Germano, and here's just a few of them. One where he said now mind you, this all happened. There's a biological father on record through the courts that he was involved with before I even met my ex-wife. It was done in Madison County, and he was the attorney on there. I mean, the problem is my daughter has 2 birth certificates. Or she has a social security number that says Montero and a birth certificate that says Urbano. It's a big problem. She's registered right now, which I've reported to the Federal Department of Education. She's registered using a false birth certificate. This document says he can change the name. Judge Gilbert's document says that he's allowed to change her name to Urbano. But it also says in there and in here that I am not trying to become the father, basically, which I didn't know what he was doing in court. I just paid him for an adoption. I'm finding out all this starting in 2022. I have messages where I question texts and emails where I question this acknowledgement of paternity. I said, it says biological father. I said, Anthony, am I missing something here? Because I don't want to sign something, but I'm not the biological father. I said, maybe I'm missing something. Can you call me? And he said, we'll talk about it Monday. And Monday, he explained to me that this is part of the adoption process, not to worry about it. That's how we go about getting my name on the birth certificate. Yes, it is, fraudulently.
All right, let me stop you for just a second, because I want to make sure a couple things. You mentioned you previously filed a report with the sheriff's office. Did you actually sign a statement about what was going on? Is there a DR associated
Yes,
with it?
there sure is.
You also mentioned talking to somebody in this office, in my office.
I
you
reached
remember?
out to Frank Pelosi because I grew up with him, and I said, Frank, before I start going crazy with this, and I was told that a detective would follow up with me on that. I said, Frank, before I said, can you please forward these emails to Mr. Fitzpatrick? I said, before I really start making a big fuss about this, I know Mr. Germano worked for the ADA's office, or for the DA's office, and I know that I know that if this comes out in a certain way, it could make your whole office look bad, right, it happens, but anybody that's had a case under him, and I thought this, and I'm a realist. I think like I'm not here to hurt the man. I'm here to get him to stop attacking me and his threats to stop, because he's taken my house, he's taken my kids, and he's also told me I'm gonna end up in a ditch if I don't shut up. Well, if I'm gonna end up in a ditch, I'm gonna make sure the whole world has heard about Anthony Germano and why I'm in that ditch. And you can understand the sheriff's department has been doing nothing, so that's also a threat that appears to be coming true. So I reached out to Frank and I said, can you forward these emails? He had Mr. Cooligan, Joe Cooligan, call me, and I tried to explain to him, and he said, you did something wrong by signing that too, so I'm going to advise you, let's not talk about this anymore. I don't feel comfortable investigating him because he used to work for this office, and his partner, his former partner, I'm guessing Mr. Fischetti, works for this office currently. And I said,
Not Joseph Ferteschi, but
Okay,
there is.
I'm not sure whose other partner is unless it's Cheyenne, but last I knew Cheyenne had his own practice and was a judge, so.
Well, there is a Ferteschi who works here, but it's not Joseph. So I think it's Joseph's dad. So.
Okay, so maybe that's what he meant. So
Okay.
here's the other thing. And I said to him, I said, no, I actually have a text message and email where I questioned the document before I signed it, because I didn't want to sign a document saying I was the biological father. Because apparently there was a biological father that he was going to get a hold of to make sure there wasn't a DNA test. There's also text messages between me and Mr. Germano in here where he states he talked to the biological father. The biological father told him he was a biological father. But in fact, Mr. Germano says, I'm not going to argue with him. I know he's not. But there was a DNA test on file through the family courts that he was involved with in Madison County. So he already knew this man was the biological father. And he took his rights away from him and gave them to me, and now he just took them away from me because of this. And the only reason I came forward with this is because I was told by the federal government. I've reported this to family court. They're doing nothing. Every attorney that I've contacted, every local attorney that I've contacted, does not want any part of this. And one of them, well, a couple of them actually told me, if I take your case, I go up against these guys, I got to work with these guys every single day. My practice is over. I'm done. They've done what they've done to you is called the blanket effect, stonewalling. You won't find an attorney within 200 miles of here that will take this case for you.
I want to be realistic with you. There is the potential that this, no matter what we do find, or it's going to be questioned as far as whether or not it's motivated. And so what I think we're going to end up having to suggest is that another agency actually leads an investigation on this into this.
What
kind of
agency
issue.
would you recommend?
That's what's the difficult thing is
Because the sheriff's, and just respectfully, he told me Cheyenne ain't gonna do shit. You go to the sheriff's, they ain't gonna listen. He told me Judge Cecil is a good friend of mine. Julie is a good friend of mine. I said, Julie who? He goes, Julie Cecil. He goes, and her husband is the chief of police, which I found out it's not. It's her brother-in-law.
Right.
But he used that threat to me, and he said, you go to the police department. Julie's husband is the chief of police. You go to the sheriff's, Cheyenne. The judge, your divorce judge, we're taking your house from you. We're taking your kids in family court. Go to the DA's office. They ain't gonna do shit either. And this is his exact words. They're not gonna do shit either because I was Fitzpatrick's number 2. You know what? Here's the thing. I'm not gonna sit in a corner and be scared. I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna put the evidence on the table. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you for seeing me.
Yeah.
And I want to make everybody aware of this before I make the public aware of it.
And at no point will I ever tell you, you can't go public with this.
Oh, right,
It's
but
just
here's the
not
thing,
who things are.
respectfully, I can't hold one man, but every case
Right.
that he's been in, and here's my thing, is I don't want to make my city look bad. I just talked to the sheriffs respectfully. I said, thank you guys, you just lost one of your own for protecting my community. Thank you. But every time I come here, you guys blow me off and say, call me, and we're going on a year now.
Right.
I have no other choice but to believe that Sergeant Cheyenne is his friend, and they're blowing me off as threatened. So I'm here, and if you guys can't look into it, I'm respectfully doing this because anybody who's had a case with him as an ADA, when they find out he was involved in fraudulent paperwork, they have a possibility to have their case overturned, do they not?
There's arguments for that sort of thing. I don't want to
I
guess
don't
at
I
all
don't
that,
want to
but-
be I don't want to contribute to getting someone off who should be in jail or do
Right.
something wrong because of a
appreciate that.
technicality. So that's why respectfully I'm here. I watched enough Law and Order. I know some things and I've been looking into it, and I don't want to make this office or this my city or my community look bad, but it's looking really bad right now.
Yeah.
I've put some of these things on YouTube, and I've had these First Amendment and freedom fighter guys get a hold of them,
Yeah.
and they absolutely went bonkers. And they said, "Do you realize that you're going to be a billionaire?" And I'm like, "I'm not doing this for money. Understand what I'm doing is I'm now every time I put up a post on Facebook, I get at least a dozen people that say Anthony Germano did this or Arlene Bradshaw did that, or they took my kids away and an attorney adopted my kids after the courts deemed me unfit." I'm not the first person that this has happened to.
Yeah.
I don't want to have this, but right now I'm advocating and I'm actually counseling other people because they can't keep their cool. What happens is they're gaslighting me in court. They're making me look bad. They're doing this, I do A, and they tell me Z, and then they take my kids away anyways. So there's a big problem here. And his wife also, I've talked to another woman and they said the social service lady took where they take the kids from you if you're the CPS. His wife works for CPS.
Okay.
So he's even, the law guardian threatened me. She was call CPS. I said, Arlene, I'm bringing to your attention that my kids are in danger. Mom is mentally unstable. She's not medicated. She's keeping my daughter out of counseling, and you guys are doing absolutely nothing but harassing me because of Anthony Germano. I said, you are AFC, not AFG. If you can see my emails to the family courts, I've been representing myself, and I'm very organized, and right now Judge Cecil has to make a tough decision because I caught Mom lying on the stand. I examined her on the stand, and I caught her breaking court orders, and they're still trying to vacate acknowledgement of paternity. Well, Arlene Bradshaw just withdrew it because I uploaded all this evidence into the EDDS.
So catch me up on the status of the family court case right now.
We had a trial.
Okay.
I represented myself the best I could. I'm no attorney, but I represented myself. I presented evidence that Mom was unfit, Mom was unstable, that Mom lied under oath, that Mom has broken multiple court orders, and that Mom is unstable. I entered a petition this thick because I had a feeling that when I went to introduce evidence after that, it wouldn't be submitted. So I entered probably a 2.5, 3-inch petition that, to my knowledge, I was told was never uploaded into the system until later on.
Was that under a support proceeding or was that under a paternity proceeding?
This was under a custody battle, basically custody. Okay. I've also had another family court judge in the building, I'm not going to mention any names, also told me that they reported this, and I have messages from them saying that they reported this and they're unsure why nothing is being done. And I've had a member of the Attorney Grievance Committee also told me that they saw my Facebook post and they reported it to Chief Counsel and nothing is being done. I've also reported this to the Attorney Grievance Committee.
Okay.
I have spoke with one of them, the Chief Counsel there, and I have received the official statement back from Mr. Germano stating that I didn't sign that because when I first reported, I reported part of it. I just reported this part that he signed another attorney's name to it. I didn't report all the other stuff that we're going over now. I waited for his official response so he could trap himself. And he did. He said that Mr. Ferteschi signed it, and his associate, and he just dropped it off of Vital Statistics. Well, I have overwhelming evidence. Now he lied to the Grievance Committee, and I brought that to her attention. And I said, his statement says this. I said, but the other evidence I just sent you yesterday, there's other issues. It's not just that he forged another attorney's name to it. And she goes, well, he didn't say Mr. Fischetti, the attorney, did it. He said his son did it, who's not an attorney. I said, well, Mr. Fischetti, his associate, to my knowledge, has a father that's an attorney and doesn't have a son. And if he did have a son, he wouldn't be old enough to be an attorney. So I said, Mary, and so she starts making up this big story about how Joseph Fischetti, the non-attorney's son, signed that. I go, well, what was he doing in his office that night if he does have a son, which he doesn't, because I've looked into that. I'm told he doesn't have a son. I said, his official statement, his response to my complaint with your office, says, Mr. Fischetti, Esquire. I said, have you talked to Mr. Fischetti? And she starts stuttering, and I said, Mary, you're lying to me. I said, or at the very least, he's lied to your office now. I've reported this a year ago. I've reported Richard Bombardo, which I have recordings of these men threatening me. I've sent it all in flash drives. I've sent this to Sydney Kelly in Rochester and Buffalo, above her. I said, I've sent you all this evidence and you've done nothing. I reported Richard Bombardo in 2022. Cheryl Crankshaw, the investigator there, told me to send all the information to Judge Murphy's chambers. Germano called me after that and said, Judge Cooner's father-in-law is Judge Murphy. You ain't going nowhere with this, Michael, and hung up on me. So I was told, I'm being told by grievance, I'm being told everywhere I go, someone tells me, go here, go there, go there. And everywhere I go, I run into a brick wall because it's Anthony Germano. He worked for the ADA's office. My children are not going to be the sacrificial lamb for Anthony Germano's fraud. And I'm here respectfully before I go very public because the YouTube people, they've got millions of viewers and they shared my story, my one story and some of the recordings about Richard Bombardo and one about fraud.
Right.
And they've got like 9 million views. And I'm not trying to be that guy,
Right.
but I'm here respectfully because something needs to be done. And you know what, the sheriff's, one of the times I called the sheriffs to follow up on that report, they said, go to the DA's office. I said, I've tried. I said, he used to work there too. And the guy on the phone laughed at me and hung up. He laughed at me and hung up.
So I got. Let me start with, social media and all that stuff. I truly, it does not. That stuff doesn't impact me whatsoever. I have to be completely grounded in the evidence that we have and all of that stuff.
And that's that's all I put
whether or
on
not
there.
it meets, the statutes to criminality. And I'm not making a decision right now whether or not this meets that. What I need to do though is, when something comes to me, and I get 10 to 15 investigation requests every week at least, and so I have to look at them and go, okay, where do we go? But one of the things I have to look out for to avoid him yelling at me most of the time is there a conflict inherent in what we're doing? Are we the best to be investigating an issue? And you've highlighted a number of reasons why the answer to this one may be, I don't think we are. Because, especially if he's saying, he's bragging to you that, you can't do anything, the DA, he loves me and all that.
Right.
Well then, what if after we review all of this, I come back and I say, you know what, there's no criminal here, it's a civil thing, and you've got a great civil case. Your question is, are you saying that because it's a civil case, or are you saying
I
that
completely
because...
I completely understand and respect it. I can, however, tell you that I have had other attorneys and other judges look at this and say he's definitely committed a crime. And I'm not asking you to judge him. Number one, he's definitely committed a crime. There's definitely fraud. I've had the federal government tell me, the Social Security Administration told me, one of the investigators there said, we have a big problem here, Mr. Urbano. I said, what is it? What's your daughter, the last name and Social Security is Montero. We will not honor this birth certificate because it was reported by your ex-wife as fraudulent. At the same time, she reported to vacate the acknowledged maternity and said that she was forced by Mr. Germano, which he never forced her. So they were investigating her complaint. That's how I got brought into it. When I started giving them the stuff that I was finding out, and then I let them know about the threats, they said, you have to report this on a local level. I've tried it, and everybody... I literally...
I understand.
I told Judge Serio, or Judge Cecil, I said, Your Honor, I said, Anthony Germano used your name in a threat and said you were going to take my kids away. I go, I haven't seen my daughter Isabella in a year. I've raised her since she's been 2. If you read through these court petitions, the only truth Mom ever tells is what a great father I am and why she wanted this adoption.
Right.
Okay? I said, and I told the judge, I said, maybe you're not the judge for this case because if you are, I said, she was my husband isn't the chief of police. I go, okay. I go, but I also said that he was your friend. He said he was your friend. Is he your friend? And she didn't answer me. A judge in open court didn't answer me. If she truly is friends with him, she should have renounced herself from this case. So should Arlene Bradshaw. They shouldn't be involved in this case, and they shouldn't be handling it. And then the sheriff's department, they should be saying, you know what? We have to have internal affairs, or let's reach out to a higher agency.
Right.
And nobody's doing that. What they're doing is they're letting this man take my house fraudulently. They're letting this man take my kids, and God forbid, what if next Tuesday I end up in a ditch? I have to let everybody know about it before that. And I respect your position and what you can and can't do, and I'm not here to say do it or don't do it. I'm here to say I just want what's fair, and I want Mr. Germano to be held accountable for this.
Sure. No, I understand.
Can I tell you, I've called 76 local attorneys? 76, and I've had them tell me I can't get involved because my career will be over, because Rule 8.3 of the Bar Association is the rat rule, and if I report him, Rule 8.3 is it? It's nicknamed, I was told by an attorney, it's nicknamed the rat rule, because you have to report an attorney. If I bring evidence to an attorney or an open court, by law and by the rules or whatever, they have to report this. Well, attorneys, they don't do that. It's called the rat rule. It's the code of silence, kind of like the movie Serpico is how it was explained to me, like
Right.
when he was going against corruption. You just don't do that. And with all the threats he's made that are coming true, I have to tell you, I'm concerned for my safety. When I'm being threatened by the sheriff's department, they're not doing anything.
So I'm not selective about the ethical rules that I follow. Just need to let you know that.
What is
I tend to apply all the ethical rules that we're required to follow. Like
So Rule 8.3 of the ABA.
So-
Are you familiar with that one?
well, the ABA doesn't apply to. New York has its own set of ethical rules.
I think
but-
that's. I mean, maybe I'm quoting it wrong.
But that-
Rule 8.3 of the New York State.
Well, the point that I want to make though is one of the ethical rules though applies to, again, taking on work where at the outset there appears to be the
Conflict.
appearance of impropriety or of conflict, and this is inherently a potentially conflicted situation. So I
agree.
need to sort it out before I can
Sure.
do anything.
I'm not asking you to do anything that you shouldn't do. I
right,
just
I
I want to
appreciate
bring here that I've reported it here. I've emailed Frank, and I even apologized to Frank because I love him to death. And the last thing I want to do
Right.
is to get him in the middle of this.
Right.
But I've called the desk. I can't tell you how many times, and asked to leave a message or speak with Mr. Fitzpatrick based on Anthony Germano's threats. He's threatened me using this office, his
Right.
friends in this office. And you know what, Frank? I used to talk to him all the time, and I don't talk to him anymore because I put him in an awkward situation, and I'm very upset about that because I love Frank. He's a great guy. I grew up with him.
Sure.
I think he's an outstanding human being, and it's for most of the people in the city. But I got to tell you, his threats are coming true. And if you can't investigate this, I can respect that. But Mr. Cooligan also told me, he tried to scare me and say that I did something wrong by signing these documents, and I better consult a lawyer. And he doesn't feel comfortable investigating. Well, it's not about comfort. And that's what I didn't like to hear is that, he says, I don't feel, it's about the law. And what you're saying makes more sense. I would have much appreciated he said that to me and said, you know what, Michael, I'm going to send this to this next level agency. I've reported this to the FBI. I just put in an online, talk to an agent on the phone for 3 hours, and I uploaded all this stuff electronically about the sheriff's deed.
Let me ask you, because there is another agency that is typically better suited for these kinds of things, and that would be the New York Attorney General's office. Have you contacted them about this?
I did. And when I first did it, it didn't have all this meat and potatoes here, and they sent me back a letter that said you properly reported it to another agency, which I'm assuming was the FBI.
Okay.
But then underneath it says something about small claims court and $5,000, which completely threw me
I
off.
doubt the FBI would be interested in something like this.
No,
Well,
that's my experience too.
If the AG could.
Here's the thing: is when I first initially reported to the FBI, I reported it because every time I would get online to NewYorkCourt.gov, someone was going into my account and they hacked it, and they would change my name, mailing address, and phone number after I fired my attorney. And I would get back on, and it was someone went in there and changed my name, address, and phone number. Well, I noticed 3 months later it said that the FBI is investigating the hacking with the New York Courts .gov website. And then one of the guys at the clerk's office told me, oh, the FBI was here today. And I was like, and then I saw it in the news like a month later, and I kind of put two and two together. So I think they are investigating something. And all my emails that I've sent to courts and everybody, I've been copying the Department of Justice. I spoke with someone there. They said that they gave me an email address for the criminal division because of the threats. And every time I send an email to the courts and to anybody, to internal affairs, I've been copying the Department of Justice. So there's a paper trail if something does happen to me, because all these other threats are coming true.
Right.
So I just did send the bulk of this to the Attorney General's office, directly to her in New York City. I've been speaking to lawyers in New York City who definitely hands down say you have a huge civil case. I got to be honest with you. I'm not looking for a payday. I'm not looking for a cash cow. I'm a simple man. What I'm looking for is this guy to stop, to leave my house, to leave my children alone, and for someone to do something about it, because every avenue, you know, when I reported the attorney grievance, you know his response to that was, "You're talking to my Aunt Mary, jackass." That was what he said to me. I've had a private investigator follow him, and he eats lunch with her at Panini's. They're in the same building. He's the floor above her. In his official response letter, he used the PO and he used the PO address, not his 224 Harrison Street address, because it's the same address as the attorney grievance committee. Now, granted, that could be a huge coincidence, but he also called her Aunt Mary. I don't know if it's truly his aunt.
I don't know either.
I haven't asked, but I can tell you I reported it as such, and I can tell you every avenue I hit, this blanket effect, this stonewall I'm running into.
Okay.
And the only one that hasn't came true yet is in a ditch.
Sorry.
And I'm being evicted out of my own house on the 30th.
What that petition for the I'm sorry, I've got a
No, I appreciate you guys seeing me on short notice. I thank you for your time, more than you know. This is a petition taking my house away, a sheriff's deed, which I believe is fraudulent. It was altered. They altered it after the sheriff apparently signed it. I've been to the sheriff's department a dozen times trying to see. I know typically when you purchase a home, it's the taxes and the water bill and everything has to go into the new owner's name, right? I bought houses before, I've sold houses before. If you see the one that was shoved in my mailbox by a real estate agent threatening them that I had to put my house on the market, you can see there's a difference in it. You can see the date on the bottom, or the date where it says I bought the house, February 11th, 2023. The one that you're holding by the attorney, someone crossed it out and wrote 2022. I have a copy of the actual deed. They also spelled the prior owner, the name's property, wrong when they were retyping the deed. They you see where it's highlighted. See Janek. So the one I was served with was altered, which you guys know that shouldn't be acceptable. I brought that to the eviction court judge's attention, and she laughed at me. And I said, "Honor, you're obviously also friends with Mr. Germano. Thank you for your time." But that stamp, well, it doesn't have this stamp. The sheriff's deed was stamped in 2023. The deed wasn't produced until January of 2024. This makes no sense.
This is 23.
No, but they crossed it out down here because this was actually 24. They just didn't cross it out up here. It was actually done in 24. Retyping this deed, the prior owner's name is Janelle Fortino. They also made that mistake and they called her Janek Fortino. If this was an actual deed, why would they need to retype it? They wouldn't. They would have just took this deed. They would have had this. I also have an email from Judge Cooper's chambers.
I used to do real estate for 10 years.
Okay.
I can tell you that typos in a deed are unfortunately very common. So that in and of itself is not.
But it's not in the original deed. Is my concern. It would be typoed in this deed as well.
Well, it depends on
Wouldn't
how
it?
they may have transferred this, because if they're just taking, like, this is a PDF copy, say, and they, you can scan it and copy.
But I have the
paste
whole
the
abstract
words.
title in my house, and not one page did they spell her name.
Right, but I'm saying when they produce this document, they may have just electronically copied from this, and, it may not scan every letter or.
Yeah,
number.
but then why did they alter? Because I brought it to their attention and I said, why wasn't this document stamped like this one? And I said, I refuse to accept this because it's a cheap photocopy with a full-size stamp on it, which means they uploaded this into the clerk's office, a photocopy, and then I received this. There's a lot of mistakes they made. They're very sloppy with their documents, I gotta tell you. And at the very least, they altered a document after the sheriff supposedly signed it, if he really did sign it. I gotta tell you, I'm a Photoshop expert. I could take your face and put it on his body and you wouldn't know the difference. I'm good with documents, and I can tell you they made a lot of mistakes. They're using a Xerox copy to falsify their documents, not Photoshop.
Okay. I want to make sure. Okay, so I think I have an understanding of the issues. What I need to do. What I need to do. I need to sit down and sort of think through the variety of issues here, because I want to give you, again, I think the potential for conflict with our office is is a concern. I need to sort it through. I need to understand where.
Maybe
we
you
are.
can take this stuff and you can call the Attorney
Well, I don't
General.
want to take any of your documents yet.
Those are copies I made just for you.
Um,
I've said one of the jokes that Mr. Germano said to me in a text message was, it was a while ago before any of this popped up, was that he took money. He took what is it? Not fraudulent money. What's it called? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
When they make fake money, what's it called?
Oh, like counterfeit.
Counterfeit. That he accepted counterfeit money from one of his clients. Ha ha ha. Well, now I was beginning to say maybe he wasn't joking, and I've sent this evidence. I've sent this to the White House, to the what do you call it? This Secret Service, because they enter. So here's the thing: is the guy threatened to put me in a ditch? He's made all these threats that are coming true.
Right.
How do I know that counterfeit money joke wasn't a joke? Maybe he did. So I sent that to the Secret Service in Washington, D.C., because I'm not going to end up in a ditch. I'm not going to become this man's sacrificial lamb.
Right.
I'm not going to have everybody ignore me and let this man get away with hurting my children and hurting people's children and him walk around here.
No, I understand
And this
that.
is right here says that Judge Cooner didn't issue a sheriff's deed, but I have a sheriff's deed with Judge Cooner's name on it.
Right.
How is that? You don't understand? Judge Cooner, the sheriff's deed was not issued by Judge Cooner. It was with the Onondaga, and her lawyer drew this up. He's got the Home and Road building after me. I mean, she's got 3 lawyers, and I guarantee she hasn't paid a dime. She got caught getting used in a free attorney, like I told you. So, and nobody's done nothing to her. All this stuff is because I'm the one speaking out about this.
Right. Okay.
And the 30th, their sheriffs are going to come and get me out of my house.
I don't have any. Well, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there is, and I appreciate you guys taking
The
the time.
problem with the landlord stuff, I say landlord house, is that would have to be challenged in, I don't know, it's probably Supreme Court, right? I would have to say
Yeah.
landlord tenant agreement, because you're dealing with a deed and you're not a renter. It wouldn't be there, but that's something that we would have to.
Sure.
I'm not a real estate attorney. I've really not done it, but I'm
No,
sure
but see,
there's
here's
a way
the
to
thing. I was
challenge
told by
it.
an attorney is that I would love to take this case because I'd be a millionaire, but I would also probably ruin my career by going up against these guys because I have to work with these guys every day,
Right.
and that 8.3 law or code or rule or
One
whatever.
of the things about you said you're in contact with lawyers down in New York City.
Right.
There's many attorneys from New York City who come up here taking cases.
Correct. No, you're right, there are.
So the good news is, maybe getting out of the area, you can get an attorney that can give you very specific and helpful advice on
I've got some.
these issues. So that's good. I'm glad.
One
to
of the
hear
pieces
that.
of advice was to come directly here,
Right.
calling and emailing, to come directly here and present this evidence to the district attorney's office. Because he said if they're not going to help you because of a conflict of interest, which you said there may
there
be,
could be, and
and you're right. If you came to me and said, "Hey, we don't
evaluate.
see nothing wrong here," I would probably say, "Well,
you're one more promise or threat that's coming through.
right," and you could understand why. And I'm not saying that this whole department would gang up against me for Anthony Germano, but I could see why I might see the bias in that situation.
And
But
we believe. I desperately want what we do to be viewed with the integrity with which we do it.
And I respectfully believe you would
So-
do that. And if you say that we can't help you, I would say that you would pass this information on to the next agency that could. I've also reported to them, so it's not like you'd be breaking any rules or anything.
Make your contact with the AGs.
I'm not sure the exact the contact name I have written down at home, but I've just literally I've emailed them and I sent hard copies of all this without the highlights and stuff on it. This is just so we can follow along here. I do have the original documents.
And let me make sure I get this correct, because I had a lot of information here, and I've gotten
Yeah.
turned around. So, in 2017, amicably with Sierra, you had you had your daughter's name changed, correct?
In 2018, 2018 was the visits we went to see Mr.
So
Germano.
you
Adoption.
successfully changed her name, though.
No, it was successfully an adoption to my knowledge.
Not just that name change petition, which was signed though by Judge Gilbert.
Right, but it also states in there that it's not changing any parental rights. It's just changing her last
Right.
name, which I wasn't involved. I didn't know about any of this until recently. I just thought I paid for an adoption. I got a birth certificate
Okay.
with me as the father, like would have if I signed it like the day she was born. Like, okay, that's what happens in an adoption. If you look through this stuff,
That was in connection with the acknowledgement of paternity.
well, no, that was in Judge Gilbert's order. He says he can change the name. It says nothing about putting a father on the birth
Right.
certificate.
Anybody can change their name.
Right,
you
so
know,
he
before
orders to change the
permission.
name. he has us sign acknowledgement of paternity. On the acknowledgement of paternity, I questioned it, as you can see in the text message. I said, don't feel comfortable, and on a phone call too, I don't feel comfortable signing because this is biological. I'm not the biological father. You've been in contact with the possible biological father, and you said he's not the biological father. So why am I signing it?
The issue there is an acknowledgement of paternity. The word paternity implies
Exactly. That I'm
biological.
right, and that's what I
So,
said to him, and he wrote it off in the text message.
as far as I know, I think anyone can do that if they want to.
Then if that's the
Basically
case,
concede
why
the
did he
point.
sign his own name and have his paralegal sign their own name? Why did he fraudulently forge?
Those look like just like witnesses, i.e. like.
Right, so there was
that
four
I-
people in the office that night. There
Right.
was myself, my ex-wife, his paralegal, Wendy, and Anthony Germano. And 2 out of the 4 people signed the wrong names to it. And then one of them, he left the I off on Cruchetti's name. So, that being said, if there was nothing fraudulent or wrong with that, which I didn't even recognize that because I didn't get that document until much later after the birth certificate. And when my ex threatened and said she was forced to do that, the first thing I did was open the file cabinet and grab the folder out that says adoption on it, and I noticed it, and I texted Mr. Germano a picture of it.
Did the birth certificate came after that?
Yes. But I just stuck it in with all the adoption paperwork in the folder. And then you gotta understand, for a year and a half, I spoke to Anthony Germano before I let him know I was on to him, going through the divorce, asking him for, if he knew the whole reason why I hired my former attorney, Richard Bombardo, was because Anthony Germano advised me not to. He said, no, he's no good, don't get him. I said, how about Jeff Roberts? No good.
So you're undergoing a divorce now.
No, I was going through a divorce in 2022. I fired my divorce attorney, Richard Bombardo.
From Sierra.
Right, yeah, correct.
Okay.
Okay, because I caught him lying to me. Recorded, it's on my Facebook. I've got recordings of it, which I've sent to everybody. Threatening, well, first he's telling me that I can't be involved in the custody. That I said, I got all this evidence. She should have no kids.
What's pending right now in family or Supreme Court? Anything?
No, they had a divorce after 2022 in Supreme Court. I fired my attorney. I went before the judge, which I had emails, and I said to Judge Fogel, and after that, Judge Cooner, I sent recordings of Richard Bombardo lying, unethical, threatening me.
So hold on a second. So you had the divorce in 22. What's the status of custody and child support and all that right now?
Well, right now, we just had trial, and Judge Cecil has not made a determination yet based on trial.
And that's going to be for custody and support?
For custody, and there's a whole bunch of mistakes made in the divorce because they never did a statement. I never did a statement of net worth. I asked anything that Richard Bombardo submitted on my behalf be not used. And from 2011-20 of 2022 to today, to current times, they had a whole divorce without me, and that was one of Anthony Germano's threats. They're taking my house away. I had no representation. I never went to a court date after February of 2023.
So here's a question I have with respect to, because obviously some of your claim has to do with the acknowledgement of paternity. I mean, you want that document to be effective, though, don't you? Because you conceivably want custody of your
This is
daughter.
my daughter. This is not monetary. I don't have a dollar.
Right,
amount
but
on
I mean,
this. This is about my kids.
In that sense, you don't want to dispute that document, even if it was covered in fraud.
I think a higher court should determine whether I'm legally her father or not, because here's the thing: is I've got family court where
But
adoption.
isn't that currently your status?
I haven't seen my daughter in a year. They've taken
Okay.
her away from me. You want to know why? Because I'm not her biological father. But legally, New York State says I'm her father. The federal government says I'm not her father. Because they stopped paying me Social Security disability benefits for Isabella because she's not my biological daughter. She's only my stepdaughter.
Okay.
We're divorced. So they started paying me just only for my son, Santino.
But in terms of family court, the procedure you just had, they're treating you as the biological father.
Correct.
Though, right?
And all this evidence here that I've uploaded into using the EDDS has been ignored twice now because Arlene Bradshaw, after trial, tried to vacate the acknowledgement of paternity. Now, I'm not a stupid man. I know vacating the acknowledgement of paternity vacates the fraudulent signature he did and also takes away my rights as a parent. I'm not willing to do that until a higher court deems that because of Anthony Germano's fraud. If the higher court says that she's not my daughter, it's going to be because of the fraud. Arlene Bradshaw made it look like me and mom did something wrong by signing an acknowledgement of paternity. And when I spoke on this on open court and I uploaded this information, this evidence, she immediately asked the judge to withdraw her petition. I said, Mr. DeRoberts declined this and said this case was already litigated because Sarah, Judge Cecil's attorney, court attorney, sent us an email saying if everybody agrees we can vacate this acknowledgement of paternity. I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. And Defter Roberts responded and said that was already litigated in front of Judge Serio in 2022. She dismissed it. We don't agree to that. The only one who agrees to it is Anthony Germano's friend, Arlene Bradshaw, because she made a whole petition after trial to vacate the acknowledgement of attorney instead of having a Lincoln hearing. I said, absolutely not. I know what's going on here. So you can see it's kind of a conspiracy when you start putting everything together, that his threats that he's made openly, some of them recorded, and my own attorney told me, after my attorney, Richard Bombardo, and I can bring him here when you guys have time if you want, or I can send him to you on PDF. I caught him and I told him, I said, you understand what you did? I said, I talked to my cousin Frank, which I did. I said, he works for the DA's office. I said, and you've broken the law. He started crying before he knew that Anthony Germano was going to have his back, before he knew that Anthony Germano was maybe involved. I've got this man for 2 hours.
How did this come about?
This was served to me.
But what was the basis for it, though?
Apparently they had a divorce without me, and Judge Kohner took my house from me because it happened in the divorce. I wasn't part of it. I thought I withdrew my petition, or I was getting granted. I told Judge Kohner, when I went to family court.
So she filed for divorce?
Well, I filed for divorce.
You filed for divorce.
I said I want to withdraw my petition, and I sent emails to the courts, and a reason why, I said I need time to get a new attorney. Richard Bombardo was not giving me my evidence I would need for trial. So I get, the courts told me, show up in February of 23 and speak your case to Judge Kohner, which I knew. Anthony Germano already threatened he was going to be my new judge. They changed judges on me. This guy, he knew it before I knew.
They didn't let you withdraw your petition?
I went before Judge Kohner. I said, I have put in complaints to the Attorney Grievance Committee. I said, I've sent your chambers recordings of my attorney.
Okay, but ultimately, though, were you able to withdraw your divorce petition?
No, they just went forward. I thought I did. I thought that was because of the investigation was open through grievance. I thought that everything would be on pause. Next thing I know, I start getting things in the mail saying that I have to put my house on the market. I told her attorney, Nancy Dyer, basically to take a shit, that I didn't believe her, and then I emailed the courts. They said Judge Kohner didn't do this. He didn't rule, and they've just done a bunch of legal tricks because I'm obviously no attorney. I've contacted, like I said, over 70 local attorneys. Nobody wants to touch this case. So what they did is I fired my attorney in 2022. Okay. And then since then, they've had court dates. One of the court dates on one of the documents that was shoved in my mailbox, not served, not sent by the courts. I've requested that the court sent me documents. They refused to. They have to get them from Nancy Dyer. Since when, I have no idea. But they had the divorce. All these things happened without me, and they've got a sheriff's deed to take my house away from me. The sheriffs are going to come to my house on the 30th, and I'm disabled. Okay, I have a pacemaker defibrillator here. I need to find a house that's one level. I have certain restrictions. The judge in Baldwinsville, I try to explain all this to her. I have 3 weeks I have to be out on the 30th. She gave me 3 weeks to get out of this house, and she did it on the 30th, not even the 31st. So I have to get all my stuff out and then sit in limbo for a day, and then hopefully I can find a place that's handicap accessible. They're violating my rights. They're breaking the law, and this is all because I spoke out about this as I was advised to by the federal government.
There's a lot of different factors in play.
There is. It's a mess.
And there's a lot. Okay.
There's a part of me, and I don't want to. I mustn't want to say this because I think Peter's right that we may not be the people to undertake an investigation because of what could be seen as conflicts of interest with former employees. We can't. It's hard for us to get involved in civil stuff. Like if there's family or Supreme Court orders, it's not really our jurisdiction, so to speak. But some of this stuff seems problematic to me from your perspective because if there's fraud or whatever on the acknowledgement of paternity, like you almost don't want to claim that there was fraud because you want that document to have force and effect.
Listen, whatever happens, happens. I just need him to stop taking my house and taking my kids. If she's not, the higher courts,
on that front, and without seeing everything or having been there, if the family court or Supreme Court proceeded as they're permitted to based on your petition, if that was all on the up and up, so to speak, and I'm setting aside that people are in cahoots or whatever, but You know, if they're doing things by the book on its face, you know, I don't know that there's much to be done to resist, say, this eviction warrant. And I know that doesn't leave you much time to get your stuff in order. But you know, I don't know that there's anything to do in the immediate, like in the next 15 days to keep that off.
No, I mean, you know what? Not, especially not when every attorney is friends or doesn't want to get involved with them and is
Right.
scared to speak the truth. I'm not, and I'm going to speak it. And if I end up in a ditch or something happens to me, everybody's going to know why. And that's, you understand, my theory is I've got nowhere to go locally. I've you know, federally, yeah, but they also said, you know, keep trying to find an attorney. I can tell you that when all this, before anybody even knew my name, I went to the bank and I took out $40,000 in cash from a prior house I sold. And I put it in brown paper bags, and I went to a bunch of other banks and I took out more money. And I put it in brown paper bags, and I put in some Halloween gold teeth. And I went, just because in case nobody took me serious, and I started going to other banks and depositing large sums of money and playing little games, so, because they have to fill out, which is a SAR, Suspicious Activity Report. And when you look like me, and you make it even worse, and you walk into a bank and you start doing dumb things and asking dumb questions, should I deposit this in $9,000 increments so it doesn't, it's not drug money or nothing, and it's not, you know what I mean? It's just so they would fill out suspicious activity reports. You don't walk into a Bank of America and drop $60,000 in brown paper bags with fake gold teeth, and that they don't report it. And I wanted my email address tracked. I'm not stupid. I figure, you know, I know what's going on here. I'm going to make sure I'm being monitored one way or another. I'm going to make sure this is exposed. One of the things Anthony Germano said to me, and I wish I could have recorded it, I got a phone call from a private number, okay? And this is between us, and I'm not, he said to me, it was right after I contacted Frank, he said, knock your fucking shit off. He says, and I called, one of the attorneys I called a while ago was Serio, because his wife was Serio, and I figured I could say this case was before your wife, you know, maybe you could refer me to someone who can look into this, but everybody's friend. So he said to me that there was an employee here that was just had to resign because he was cheating on his wife with 2 employees. He goes, they'll cover it up. This is exactly what he said to me. And he said, Sean, he didn't say his last name, but he said his name was Sean. He just had to resign from the district attorney's office. He goes, they're going to cover it up. He goes, because they're not going to want my name out there. He goes, shut your fucking mouth before you end up in a ditch. And they hung up. It was that fast of a phone call. And the Sean I know works for Serio now because they when I called there, it was Sean Chase. Now I'm not saying that that's true. I'm not making any accusations, but that's what he told me. How the fuck, excuse my language, would I know something like that if it is true? How do I know who Judge Cecil's husband is? How do I know that Kevin Cooner's father-in-law is Judge Murphy, the head judge? So do you understand where every
Right.
every avenue I've
Small
went,
community.
right? Everybody knows
Yeah,
everybody,
we
and
know.
everywhere I go, I've got his threats coming true, down to the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department. I've got no choice to report this higher, and I'm here respectfully because I'm going to get very loud with this, and I don't want to make this office or anybody look bad, or I don't want anybody. He was in charge of, to my understanding, like the criminal division. So if you put a pedophile or something away, I don't want to get someone's case flipped over on a technicality because he did something wrong.
I mean, that's not of your concern, you know.
It is, because he did a good job putting people away that should have been put away.
I understand. But
So I don't want some lawyer to come in and say, I can get my client out and put some dangerous man on the street because of this.
That's
So-
not your concern.
but it is, because I care about my community.
Well, I get that, but you have to.
So it
you
puts
have
me
to
in a
look,
tight
you have to look
spot.
out
No,
for
I
that.
do. You're
You
right.
have to
First and
look out for
foremost, I
yourself.
do. But
You
at
know,
the same
for-
time, I don't want to be that guy where I'm making noise and becoming public enemy number one, because I am.
I'm not. That is my job role here. I'm not worried about that.
What's your job role here? I'm sorry.
I do appeals, so like
Okay.
that, you know, post-conviction stuff that comes to light, that ends up on my
Okay.
desk. I'm not worried about that. Like,
Okay,
that stuff
but
happens.
if it does hit the headlines, and it does, you know what I mean, it does put a tarnish on the bill. You know what I mean? And you guys do a good job here. I know a lot of you guys here. I grew up in the same neighborhood as these guys. So I don't feel like everybody here is crooked and corrupt. I feel like they either can't say anything because they're going to be the rat, breaking the rat rule.
Sure.
Or they're friends with him and they don't want to get involved, period. And or they're colleagues like you guys and say, hey, there is a big conflict of interest here. So legally, what do we do? So legally, what do we do? I would say if you guys can't do anything, that you could at least take the information and give it to a higher agency that you think.
But coming from us, it's nothing. It's got to come from the person who.
I've already
gathered
sent
and
it, but
explain
if you guys also sent it to the Attorney General's office, said, hey, we have a dilemma here. We've presented all this evidence. We sat down, and we decided, sit down with Fitzpatrick, whoever you guys sit down and say, we decided there's some conflicts here. we need to send this off.
Right.
Eh,
I understand what you're saying. As far as taking documents and handing them to other agencies, we don't do that. I don't do that for a variety of reasons. Number one is, what happens if one of the sheets disappears? It doesn't get there, and all of a sudden, again, the appearance of, well, you buried something, Peter, so that it wouldn't get where it needs to be. I don't want to take that chance. I don't want to be responsible.
If it
Because
matches the same
truly,
stuff I sent them.
I understand, but truly, I have 1,000 investigations that I'm responsible
Sure.
for, and every one of them has dozens, hundreds of pages, thousands of pages associated. So, my procedure is always to, obviously look at, review, glance at, to understand what you're bringing. But when it's like, okay, I'm going to suggest that you contact a different agency, I give you back your documents. I always do.
Right.
And it's what I have to do. I just don't have the ability to store.
And I recognize that it would appear like if our office is giving something to the AG or some other body, that it might seem like there's more weight to that, but honestly, I don't
Well, no,
think they care about
it's
that
more so
very
because if you say you can't invest, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but if you say, geez, there is a conflict here, sorry, we can't help you. It's almost the same as saying, yeah, we looked at everything, we don't find nothing wrong. So it's kind of a catch-22. At least if you send it to another agency, you could say, hey, we found some merit here. There's some definite things going on. This guy's being all these threats that he has. It's not just me. Some of them are recorded. I mean, I literally have recordings of them that I've sent. I've sent Frank. I've sent the Supreme Court. I've sent Family Court. Nobody's doing nothing. So you can say, this guy's kind of getting railroaded in every way, shape, or form. This needs to be investigated. Our office just isn't the one to do it. That's what maybe I'm here looking for you guys to say, because it does have some merit. Because if you look into this, you could say, okay, I can see why we're not the agency to investigate it, but it does need to be investigated, and we will stand behind the fact that at least it needs to be investigated.
Right. That's where it's difficult for me without having really started an investigation and verified aspects. I can't say there's something here, someone needs to go further. What I can say is, Michael came to us with these documents, with his, explanation of what's going on. He says he's got recordings. Someone needs to look into this because there are some serious and specific allegations. But because of the potential for conflict and the appearance of conflict, we can't be that agency. So what I can say is, again, the claims have been made and they sound serious, they need to be reviewed. But I can't vouch for that this is happening because I don't yet know. I'm not trying to doubt you or say that I'm doubting you, but right. I have to be again bound by the evidence, and I haven't looked into this enough to know what this all means.
Are you personally friends with Anthony Germano?
I've known him for many years. Are
you personally friends with Anthony Germano? Do you know anything about him as far as anything I've said, other than what I've said here?
Nope.
Maybe he could look at it.
As part of the office, we have to treat our whole office
as an office.
Yeah. So if he's got, if he's good friends with Bill Fitzpatrick or anybody else, it's not.
No, I understand.
That's the other thing. If he's saying, I was Fitz's number 2. He works at Fitz's pleasure. Like literally, Fitz could walk into this room right now and say, grab your stuff and get out. And so if the concern or the threat is, Bill can take care of me, you've got nothing, that doesn't fix the issue or the appearance of impropriety. So that's why we have to, again, I need to make sure that I'm putting you in touch with somebody that you can look at it and go, I got the fair shake that I've been asking for. They looked at it with an open mind, not with an agenda.
Sure,
That's what I
respect
need
that.
to give
I respect
to you.
and appreciate that. So you're saying that the only other person would be the Attorney General?
Well, that's the one that comes to mind immediately, but that's one of the reasons why, if
How
you've
about
already reached out
the Sheriff's
to them...
Department said I should talk to Internal Affairs, and I've left them dozens of messages too, and
I don't think that's the way. I mean, because police internal affairs investigates their own agency, so they're not going to do.
They recommended that, not me. They
Well,
recommended Internal Affairs because of the threats from
that
Cheyenne.
doesn't make sense.
Well, because of the threats that he's made against the sheriffs, and rightfully so. Like I said, they're not investigating the report that I made almost a year ago.
Right.
So my concern is the other threat he's made is I'm going to end up in a ditch. So I'm bringing this to everybody publicly possible. And the Sheriff's Department, a while ago, when I called to follow up, they said, bring it to the district attorney's office. They have investigators that will look into this. And that's what I did, and that's what I'm doing again, because now the threats are getting closer and closer, and the only one left after this, Judge Cecil takes my kids away, they take my house away, and the only one left after that is I end up in a ditch. Well, everybody's gonna know if I end up in a ditch, why I'm in that ditch.
Well, I don't want to see you in a ditch.
I don't either, but at the same time, I don't wanna see my house or my kids taken, but that's happened too.
Right. All right. I need to figure out, and if we can figure out who you contacted at the AG's office, that would be helpful, because perhaps you were in touch with someone that's in the wrong department, because they're very compartmentalized as far as what departments within their agency.
I sent specifically to the attention to the Attorney General. I sent all this stuff with a nice long letter describing briefly what we discussed here.
That may not be the best way.
Right,
And I don't mean that in a
Well, I filled out a form that they
disrespectful
sent
way.
me a complaint form,
Okay.
and I sent this evidence, and I sent this.
Do you still have a copy of the complaint form? Did you keep a copy for yourself?
I did. It's at home. I don't have it here.
Is it an electronic thing or is it a?
No, they mailed it to
Like
me,
a
and I
actual
emailed some stuff electronically as well. So
Do you remember approximately when you did that?
they should have it by now. It was a couple weeks ago where I sent the hard copies of everything. I think it was a week before that where I sent it digital.
So you said just a few weeks ago, so within the last 3-4 weeks?
Within the last week, I sent this stuff on a hard
Okay,
copy.
so that's pretty short. I mean, they would, I don't know what their time frame is, but it's not gonna be that quick.
Right.
I'm sure.
And I didn't get into so much detail. I kind of broke it down in bullet points to the threats and what was happening and what wasn't happening.
Sure. Sure.
I'm with my colleague here on the idea that the AG seems like the best.
Right, but see, when I spoke with them initially, they said to send this stuff
I know
to
everybody's
complaint.
like trying to kick the can to someone
They
else.
said-
That happens all the time, where they will, where something literally in fact, I
Put
have a
yourself
lot
in
of
my
cross.
shoes.
No, I
I'm in the
understand.
middle of being threatened. This is coming true, like serious threats by the DA's office and the sheriff's department.
Right.
They're coming true. I contact the Attorney General's office. They said, we're going to send you a complaint form, but we need you to go to the. I said, I've reached out to. They said, go to the district attorney's office and demand it. I said, I'm not going to demand
But I
anything.
want, Michael, I need you to hear me when I say, they say that all the time, and they give no shits about what your response is.
Correct.
When I respond back to them and say, you are telling him to go to a conflicted office to investigate an issue, you can't do that. You have to. This is where you guys need to assess for yourself. Then it's not coming from you saying, well, they sent me here, because we get told that all the time.
Right.
And when we follow up,
And
no,
listen,
we
I
didn't send-
completely agree with and respect what you're
So-
saying. But I'm telling you that's what they told me to do.
I know,
Just-
but I'm
and I
gonna.
went to vital
but-
statistics.
But once they know that we cannot, there may be an ethical, even perhaps even a legal issue to us being the ones to investigate this issue, and they realize they can't punt it. That's when maybe we get a different answer.
Well, that's
Maybe
why I'm
they'll
saying
start
maybe
taking
if
it
they
serious.
talk to you and
Right.
you said, you know what, we need to talk to him.
That's
he
why I
said
was
that
trying to
you're-
figure out the status of your complaint.
And if you would write down your name and number for me, I will give me your card, whatever. I will call you back and see who I spoke with and on what date, because I did write it down. I got to tell you that I was in the Civic Center today, and I was on almost every floor. I sat down for about an hour. I've got another judge. I don't know if I told you who reported this. A judge just looked at this.
Which judge?
I don't really want to say, but it's a family court judge
Okay.
who I've sent this. I've copied emails from the courts, and also she sent me a friend request after I put this stuff on Facebook, and she apologized on behalf of the courts. I have email messages, text messages. I have a personal phone number where she's told me that she's reported this to the Attorney Grievance Committee.
Okay.
Okay, where this
Do you
is
know when
completely
that
wrong.
was? Approximately how long ago that report to grievance committee would have been?
This was the judge reported it.
Yeah.
She told me that she reported it to chief counsel. I think it was about 3 months ago, which I also have my own complaint with attorney grievance. I was talked to the deputy Michelle Mignano over in the Civic Center. She's the health department. She's the deputy commissioner, I think, for the health department.
Yeah.
I just sat down with her. I was in her office for about an hour. I went over all this with her.
I can't imagine they would.
Well, because of the birth certificate.
Well,
because I
right,
was
yeah,
also told
yeah.
to report this to Vital Statistics, which I did a year ago.
Yeah, but again, you want the birth certificate to be the way it is, right? Because that has you on there, which you want.
But I don't. They took my rights. So I haven't seen my daughter in a year. What does
No,
it
no,
matter?
I get that, but that's.
What does it matter if
that's
my
a-
name's on a birth certificate? If I
No,
can't
I
be your
know,
father,
but-
that piece of paper means
But
nothing.
from their perspective, what are they gonna do?
From their perspective, they're acknowledging that I'm the father, but they've taken my they've taken
They
my
did.
rights away.
A court did.
The courts did. What they're saying is
Vital stati- you know, like.
no, not vital statistics. I'm speaking of the courts. The courts.
Oh, okay.
That document means nothing. It says I'm her father, but I haven't seen my
Yeah.
daughter in a year, and the courts are allowing that
Right.
because she doesn't want to see you because she
Right.
found out you're not her biological father. My beef is if Anthony Germano did a real adoption, none of this would be in question. They're playing favoritism to my ex, who has mental illness that she's untreated for, that admitted on the stand. That I examined her, I defended myself, and I represented myself. And the stuff that she admitted on the stand and breaking court orders and all this stuff, she should not even. She should be getting supervised visits at the most. That's why I chose to represent
So-
myself.
Let me put it this way, there's two different things I think at play here. One, there's the process that family court / Supreme Court have taken with respect to the divorce, the, your trial
But
on
you're talking
custody.
about the
Hold on,
birth
hold on,
certificate.
hold on. This is where I'm getting, this is what I'm trying to say. There's the process with the courts and what they've done to your custody, visitation, support, whatever, ability to live in your house, any of your assets that you may share or formerly shared with Sierra, whatever. That's the court process. That really would only be reviewed based on what happened in court and the documents that were filed in connection with it. The other thing that's going on is what we would say is sort of behind the scenes or off the record, right? Or not exactly off the record, but threats or interactions you've had with Germano or Shiano or whoever else. That's a separate thing. I mean.